Hello and welcome to the Permaculture Podcast with Scott Mann, a listener-supported program. My guest for this episode is Brad Lancaster, author of the Rainwater Harvesting for Drylands. I'm back with today's interview with Steve Witt. My guest for this episode is Ramesh Kent, a permaculture teacher and designer originally from the United States. In this episode, my guest is Jeff Lowenfels, co-author along with Wayne Lewis. Tonight I'm interviewing Caroline Riley Carberry from Austin. You're listening to my interview with Joel Salatin. My guest for this episode is Mark Shepard. David Holmgren returns to us first with a two-part conversation. This is the Permaculture Podcast. I'm Scott Mann. Permaculture is an ethical system of design that is oriented around the idea originally of creating permanent agriculture, but over time has become one of creating permanent human culture. Initially a land-based practice, as this idea has matured since the 1970s, it's become something more about not only how do we grow our food, but also how do we retain all the things that matter to us as people? How do we continue to have the arts and education and science? How do we still have deep, meaningful conversations about the human experience while ensuring that not only do we continue as a species, but also all the other life on Earth along with us? 2009, I was just looking around and found a listing online that Susquehanna Permaculture in Lancaster, Pennsylvania was doing a permaculture design course over 7 months, where it was like one weekend a month for 7 months, and that covered the class. And so that was my opportunity then to finally go take a permaculture design course. And that's where I met one of my friends and mentors, Ben Weiss, Dylan Neighbor Cruz, and I was part of one of their first permaculture design courses. And it was through some of Dylan's worldview and understanding of activism that I came to this idea that permaculture could be more than just the landscape. Taking the class with him, I got to know a lot of the people in the area and what they were doing, who the herbalists were, what the local farms were, what the local farmers market scene was like, sustainable agriculture that was occurring in the area, community-supported agriculture, organic ag, like all this stuff kind of came together in this very intense educational experience. And that was when I decided that I had a skill set that I could bring this information to the world because I had been in radio. My background is in IT. I've set up and run servers and done all that kind of stuff. So that's what led me then to the podcast. And so I created the Permaculture Podcast as my permaculture design course was ending, and then was having conversations with permaculture design teachers around the world because they were contacting me. They're like, what are you doing with this? What are podcasts? Why are you doing this? What's your background? Like, why are you qualified to do this? So I was like, well, I have had a permaculture design course, so we can talk about what that experience was like. And because the permaculture design course is the intro, it was one of those, well, who did you study with? Who did they know? Who did they study with? And that purity test is one of the things that I can't stand. I absolutely despise any kind of are you good enough or do you know enough or anything like that. I'm like, I don't really give a damn. I just want you to do it. If you care about fashion and that's what you love, then apply permaculture to fashion and the clothes you're going to buy and what you're going to do. It's whatever you love. That's what I like about permaculture. You just do it. This isn't something that we have the time or the opportunity to afford to be elitist or classist about. And I don't want somebody to be trying to present themselves as anything more than they are. Just be yourself and do it. My on-air persona as an interviewer, this kind of space that I've developed to have a conversation, is about drawing out someone else's story. If they were going to sit down and catch up with somebody who they haven't seen in 20 years, but they were best friends with in high school, how would they have that conversation? What would they talk about? I want to hear the smile in their voice, and be as excited about what it is that they're doing as they might talk about their children or anything else that they care about. And so that's really become my thing, and that's why I tell people when we're working on an interview, the only thing I'm going to ask them about is their biography and background, how they came to do what they do, and some final thoughts at the end. Everything else is open to conversation. I want to get people off their talking points. More than anything, that's what I seek in an interview, is to provide a space where the guest feels comfortable to not have to fall back on their talking points or their outline. And so as a result of that, I don't prepare for an interview. I usually don't read somebody's book until after the conversation. I'll browse the chapter headings to get an idea of what it is that they have to do, what it is that they're working on, but I want to know as little of that as possible because I want them to share their story. Because I can't do 20 questions. I don't like Q&A. I like the anecdotes and the stories and weaving in these different pieces of my own life so that my guest can find something that they connect to, that they can tell a story about. And it's that those points of commonality between myself and a guest I think are really important, because that's what my listeners find too. I don't like to edit for content. If someone records an interview with me, I'm not going through, I'm not cutting anything out. I'm not pulling stingers, I'm not trying to present anything other than the conversation that we had. If somebody starts to say something and then decides that they want to restart or answer something differently, I might pull that. Or if we decide that, we're not really happy with this question, I might remove a piece like that. But it's what we talk about is what we talk about. And so that's why I like to handle a lot of the production, is so that I can make sure that all that sounds the same, it's presented the same way. But anybody who wants to do this, I always invite, contact me. I'll tell you what you can use to record a conversation and get it to me. And then I'll put it out on the air.
Hi, this is David Bilbrey with ecothinkit.com and the Permaculture Podcast. And I'm here today with David Holmgren, which, as many of you know, is the co-originator of permaculture along with Bill Mollison.
My co-host now, David Bilbrey, has recorded, I think he's recorded about 30 episodes, I think 20 of which or so we've released. And it's just, he called me one day wanting to know how he could help the show. We were talking for about 2 years before he recorded his first episode. And then he did, and it worked, and we've just been doing it ever since then. He is going to get a completely different interview from someone like David Holmgren than I am. And so a lot of times if somebody's like, hey, I've been on your show before, I'd like to talk about a new project, it's like, sure, but don't talk to me, let's talk to my co-host. I'm a really big heavy metal fan, and one of my friends who was also into metal shared this idea with me of black letters. Fans will write a letter to one of their favorite artists, whoever the musician might be, whatever position they have in the band, because it's not always about the front man. And they'll write a letter and put it in a black envelope, and they'll give it to the artist at a show. And it's this idea, it's a sealed envelope, that whatever this person's going through, if they're having this rough moment on the road because they're away from family, or they're working on a really difficult piece of music that's really personal, or just having a time in their life, that they can then open that letter and refer to it and read it as this heartfelt moment shared to them by a fan. And I've had a lot of those kinds of moments. Now, granted, my letters come through the mail. They're not in black envelopes or anything like that. But it made me realize that people who listen to the show were doing that for me as well, by sharing their appreciation by letter or postcard or email. And there's been a number of those kinds of moments that stand out for me. But more than anything, there's a shared thread for people who are trying to find solace in the world, trying to make their own way and find peace with what it is that they're doing. And I've had people who were members of the military who have come back from fighting war, who are trying to handle what they've experienced when it comes to being able to sit and listen to, me talk about these things, or they're finding a guest that they connect to, that they're able to find these voices in the wilderness with people who share these same ideas. And that's really powerful for me, is this running thread of those kinds of things. And people who have had terrible childhoods and other rough experiences, finding something meaningful within the practice of permaculture. And again, by listening to the show, knowing that they're not alone, by going back through the hundreds of episodes that exist there and know that there are thousands and thousands of people in the world who share their ethics, who share their ideas, that this isn't new. It's not something that they're doing on their own anymore, and that they can connect with people. Feedback from guests and listeners has been that they like that 45-minute to an hour format. Don't like it shorter, because it's just the right amount of time that I can listen to part of it on the way to work, and then another episode on the way home, or over lunch or things like that. As much as I would like to sound like fresh air and Terry Gross, and that is my model for these kinds of things, I don't have a recording studio, I don't have the equipment, I don't have the gear, so I just do the best that I can. If I have an interview that doesn't go well, for me personally, or I'm not particularly happy with for whatever reason, it's not really about me. It's what do my listeners get out of it? What do my guests get from it? I can be okay with this idea that comes from a lot of production of ship it and forget it. And it's not that I am not thinking about all of my episodes or don't care about them, but it's that once it's out into the world, it's no longer mine. And that's what matters, is that I'm getting it to people, is that I'm still delivering this content, this material to people, so that they can hear these voices that they connect with. There were two experiences that really brought it home for me. And I mentioned Toby Hemingway earlier, and he was one because we were having this off-the-record conversation where he treated me as if I was a colleague, asking me for feedback about his book and what he was doing in his current work. And that was, I just kind of sat there looking around and going, wait, why are we having this conversation? And I didn't understand then how much of an impact that I'd had in the world. And similarly, my first interview with David Holmgren, we sat and talked for like an hour and 45 minutes as he shared these insights about permaculture that I had never understood before. And here's like this really pivotal private moment with one of the founders of permaculture, just because we could. And those are probably the two that stand out the most for me from those points where like, I can do this. Olson-Ramanujan is one of my favorite permaculture practitioners in the world. She's just hands down amazing, all the things that she does. And I had the opportunity to meet her not long into my recording the podcast, but she knew my voice. And so my friend, photographer John, and I went to their first like open house weekend in Ithaca with the Finger Lakes Permaculture Institute. And so we're up there, and John and I are having a good time. We're touring the farms, meeting Steve Gabriel in person for the first time. But we're standing there at the social afterwards, after touring everything, and Karen's there, and I walk over to her, and I lean in into my podcast voice. This is the Permaculture Podcast. I'm Scott Mann. And it looked like she was going to come out of her skin when she realized that it was me. And like, that was really amazing for me, and like we continue to have conversations since then. But like knowing that there are these people who I respect who listen to the show too, and we have this kind of experience, those kinds of moments really bring it home for me that I have this role in this space within the community, and that I have an impact not only on the people who are my mentors and, you know, friends, but also on all these other people who are interested in permaculture. Anybody who has the desire to do it should, because you have something to share that's valuable to somebody. And that's what really matters, is that we can tell these stories and make the world smaller and have more to share and get to know each other better, so that when we talk about these things that matter, we know that there are other people in the world who are there with us. The Permaculturepodcast.com is where all these things are archived. I have close to 600 episodes in the archives now. If you subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or anything like that, you're only going to get back to like late 2017, so there's a ton of material before that. If anybody ever wants me to interview somebody or want me to explore a particular topic, I make myself available. The best thing's email, show@thepermaculturepodcast.com. So definitely just email me if you have anything, and we can take the conversation from there.